So in the 1840s, right, there was this Scottish surgeon named Dr. James Esdale.
Right, he was stationed out in Bengal, India.
Exactly. And over the course of just a few years, he performed roughly 400 major medical procedures.
And we are talking about severe, really invasive stuff here.
Oh, absolutely. Amputations, massive tumor removals, incredibly delicate operations on the eye and the throat. And he did all of this with zero chemical anesthesia.
None at all. No ether, no laughing gas.
Not a single drop of modern painkillers.
Hmm.
And his patients. I felt absolutely nothing.
Which is just, I mean, it's mind-boggling when you consider the historical context of that era.
Right, because this is way before modern medicine.
Exactly. This was decades before Louis Pasteur even proved the germ theory of disease. It was before Joseph Lister introduced antiseptic surgery.
So hospitals back then were basically just like infection factories.
They really were. Yet Esdale's mortality rate was hovering around maybe 2 or 3%.
Which is wild.
Yeah, his patients almost never developed postoperative sepsis. Their bodies just, well, they simply healed.
So the obvious question for anyone hearing this is, how on earth did he pull that off?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have some secret lost medical technology, right?
No, not at all. He wasn't performing magic or miracles.
Right. What he was doing was utilizing a profoundly powerful hack in the architecture of the human mind.
He was using a specific psychological technique to literally rewrite his patient's physical reality.
Exactly. Shutting off pain receptors and supercharging their immune systems just by, talking to them.
He was bypassing the conscious mind entirely and just giving direct orders to the subconscious.
And that historical anomaly, that whole story, is the perfect entry point for what we are unpacking today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a huge topic.
It really is. Because if you're listening to this, you are probably the kind of person who is constantly trying to, absorb knowledge, figure out how things work.
Right, trying to optimize your life without getting totally buried under information overload.
Exactly. Well, today we are looking at the ultimate operating system, your own mind. We've got a massive stack of notes, case studies, and excerpts, all drawn from Joseph Mercy's classic text, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
And I want to be clear, we are not here to just skim through some dusty, mid-century self-help platitudes. That's not the goal.
No, definitely not. The mission today is to essentially tear down the engine of the mind and see how the gears actually turn.
Because the core premise we are dealing with here is staggering. Over 90% of your mental life is subconscious.
90%?
Yeah, 90%. That means the rational, analytical mind you are using right now to listen to this, to navigate traffic, or decide what's for dinner.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. It's a tiny fraction of what's actually running the show.
It really reframes those moments we've all experienced, like when the exact specific thing you have been deeply agonizing over ends up happening.
Oh, yeah. Almost like you drew a map for the universe to follow.
Right. Or, conversely, when you are struggling with a really complex problem at work for days, making zero progress.
And then you just stare out a window, stop thinking about it, and boom, the perfect solution just drops into your head, fully formed.
Yes. It genuinely feels like there is a completely separate entity in there pulling the levers.
Because mechanically speaking, according to this text, there is.
So the goal here is to strip away all the mysticism and just look at the hard psychological mechanics the text presents.
We need to figure out not just what this 90% of your mind is doing, but why it behaves the way it does.
And most importantly, how you can systematically direct it instead of just being along for the ride.
So let's start by mapping out that architecture, because the distinction the source material makes right out of the gate is absolutely crucial.
Right. It says we do not have two separate minds.
Exactly. It's not a Jekyll and Hyde split personality situation. We have one mind, but it operates in two entirely distinct spheres of activity.
Okay, so let's break those spheres down. First, you've got the conscious mind, which the text refers to as the objective mind.
Right. That's the part that reasons. It analyzes. It makes choices based on data from your 5 physical senses.
So it's like your executive function.
Exactly. It is the part of you that chooses what city to live in, what career path to take, or whether you want to drink coffee or tea this morning.
It's active, it's analytical, and it's constantly evaluating evidence to determine what is true and what is false.
But then you cross over into the second sphere, the subconscious. or the subjective mind.
And here is the defining characteristic that drives literally everything we are going to talk about today.
It's a big one. The subconscious does not reason. It does not argue.
It doesn't look at a piece of information and say, wait a minute, does this actually make logical sense?
No, not at all. It accepts whatever is impressed upon it and executes it automatically. It is the ultimate unquestioning yes man.
To really visualize the absolute kind of terrifying literalness of this, the author uses a brilliant analogy.
Oh, the ship analogy. I love this one.
Yeah. So imagine a massive steam-powered ocean liner. Your conscious mind is the captain standing way up on the bridge.
Right. The captain has the binoculars. He can see the horizon. He checks the compass, and he issues all the navigational orders.
But the subconscious mind is the crew working down in the dark engine room.
They control the boilers, the massive turbines, the sheer physical machinery that actually propels the ship forward.
And the crucial detail here is that the crew down in the engine room has absolutely no windows.
None. They cannot see the ocean. They can't see the weather.
They just listen for the bells and telegraph signals coming down for the captain.
Exactly. If the captain on the bridge gets distracted, misreads the charts, and orders full steam ahead while steering directly toward a jagged coral reef.
The guys down in the boiler room don't hesitate.
Not for a second. They don't look at each other and say, hey, this seems like a really bad idea. We are going to sink.
They simply shovel more coal into the furnace.
Right. They will blindly, efficiently drive that ship right into the rocks because they're completely obedient to the chain of command. They just do not have the capacity to evaluate the order.
That paints a pretty stark picture. You're basically dealing with an immense blind power source.
It's pure force. The text also frames it like a garden, which I think is helpful.
Right, the garden analogy. So you, the conscious mind, you're a gardener, planting seeds all day long.
And the seeds are your habitual thoughts. The subconscious is just the soil.
And the soil is entirely neutral. It doesn't care at all what you plant.
The soil's only job is to grow the seed. If you plant the seeds of an apple tree, you get apples.
But if you plant the seeds of poisonous nightshade, the soil will diligently grow poison.
It doesn't discriminate, and it doesn't try to, protect you from the toxic plant. It merely responds to the nature of the seed.
You know, it reminds me of cognitive psychology with the reticular activating system, or the RAS, in the brain.
Oh, that's a great parallel.
Because your brain filters millions of bits of sensory data every single second. And your conscious thoughts tell the RAS what is important.
Right. So if you constantly think about how terrible your life is, your brain will literally filter reality to show you more evidence of how terrible your life is.
Exactly. The soil grows the seed.
The source material takes it even further with a chemistry analogy, actually. I think it grounds this in a really rigid universal sense of law.
Yeah, explain that one, because it really drives the point home.
Well, just like combining 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen always makes water. Every single time, no matter if you're in New York or Tokyo.
It's an unvarying mathematical principle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The subconscious operates on that same kind of unvarying law. It creates a physical or circumstantial equivalent of the thoughts it is consistently fed.
It's just an automatic formula.
And if we pause and really break down the implications of that formula, it is deeply unsettling.
Because it means there is absolutely no internal filtering mechanism in deeper layers of your mind.
None. Your subconscious cannot take a joke.
The text gives a highly relatable financial example here.
Oh, yeah. If you repeatedly tell yourself, I can't afford that, or I'm always broke, even if you're just casually complaining to a friend.
Your subconscious does not register that as a passing venting session.
No, it registers it as a direct navigational order from the captain.
It accepts the premise of lack as a fundamental truth.
Yes. And because it controls that 90% of your mental processing, pulling on every bit of knowledge, habit, and behavioral pattern gathered in your lifetime,
It works tirelessly to manifest that accepted premise into reality.
it will subtly influence your decisions, your motivation, and your actions to ensure you remain in a position where you literally cannot afford what you want. It just proves you right.
Wait, hold on. Let me just try to wrap my head around this from an evolutionary standpoint.
Yeah.
Because this is where I get tripped up.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I use a modern analogy, the conscious mind is the programmer typing at the keyboard. The subconscious is this wildly powerful computer terminal executing the code.
Right, running the biology, the habits, everything.
But according to this text, it has absolutely no antivirus software.
Yeah.
Doesn't care if the code I type is a helpful app to organize my finances or a destructive malware virus that's going to delete my entire hard drive. It just hits run.
That's the premise, yeah.
So why on earth would evolution build an incredibly powerful operating system and leave it completely vulnerable to any stray, destructive thought? Why no built-in antivirus?
That is the perfect question to ask, and the text addresses this implicitly by defining the specific role of the conscious mind.
Oh, so there is an antivirus.
Evolution did build an antivirus, but it's not in the engine room. It's up on the bridge. The conscious mind is the antivirus software.
Okay, I see.
The author refers to the conscious mind as the watchman at the gate. Its primary biological and psychological function is to evaluate incoming data and protect the subconscious from false or destructive impressions.
So the system itself isn't flawed. It's just that the user, us, is completely negligent. We're voluntarily turning off the firewall.
Precisely. Think about it. If the subconscious had to stop and analyze every single biological process, habit, and thought before executing it, you would be paralyzed.
Right. If you had to consciously think about, like, dilating your pupils, digesting your breakfast, moving every muscle fiber just to walk down the street.
You'd collapse. The subconscious has to be automatic and unquestioning to handle the immense load of keeping you alive. The vulnerability is just the trade-off for efficiency.
That makes a lot of sense.
The problem is that most of us are asleep at the keyboard. We let the viruses slip right past the watchman because we fundamentally don't understand the mechanics of suggestion.
Which brings us perfectly to the next major pillar of the material. How do these viruses actually get past the watchman?
Right, the power and peril of suggestion.
The text categorizes suggestion into two distinct types. First, you have autosuggestion, which are the suggestions you deliberately or accidentally give to yourself.
And second, there's heterosuggestion, which are the suggestions you receive from other people, from the media, society, the outside world.
And because the subconscious doesn't make comparisons, it is entirely at the mercy of any suggestion that the conscious watchman fails to reject.
Let's unpack autosuggestion first, because it's the one we theoretically have the most control over. The source material provides a fascinating historical success story here.
Oh, regarding Enrico Caruso, right?
Exactly. One of the greatest tenors in history.
So Caruso was backstage before a massive performance, and he was suddenly struck with crippling, overwhelming stage fright.
His throat was literally paralyzing. The muscles were spasming due to the intense physiological response to the fear. Perspiration was just pouring down his face.
His conscious mind was spiraling, generating thoughts like, they are going to laugh at me, I can't hit the notes, I'm going to completely ruin my career.
But he recognized this conscious panic and he gave it a name, didn't he?
Yeah, he called it the little me.
He conceptualized his fearful, rationalizing conscious mind as the little me that was actively trying to strangle the big me.
And the big me was his subconscious power, right? That deep, autonomic wellspring of his immense vocal talent.
Exactly. But here is the critical part. Caruso understood the architecture we just talked about. He knew he was the captain.
So he didn't try to reason with the fear. He didn't sit there and analyze it.
No, he stepped back behind the stage, squared his shoulders, and audibly, forcefully commanded the little me to get out. He literally shouted, "The big me is gonna sing!"
He used a direct, authoritative autosuggestion to completely override the panic.
Yes, he acted as a ruthless watchman. He refused to let the fear virus into the engine room.
And by asserting that absolute, commanding authority, his subconscious responded to the stronger order.
It released the vital forces in his body, the throat spasms stopped, and he walked out onto the stage and gave a majestic performance.
That is like the gold standard of autosuggestion. You catch the bad code and immediately override it.
But the text also provides a genuinely harrowing example of autosuggestion gone wrong.
Oh, the story of the father. This one is dark.
It is a dark story, but it perfectly illustrates the impersonal, mechanical nature of the mind. This father was desperate to see his daughter cured of a severe, crippling form of arthritis, along with an incurable skin condition.
He was just so fraught with worry that he repeatedly, constantly said to himself and to others, I would give my right arm to see my daughter cured.
He repeated this specific phrase for roughly 2 years.
And because the subconscious takes things with absolute, blind literalness.
It doesn't understand metaphors. It does not understand poetic exaggeration. The father's conscious mind planted that specific seed over and over again. It accepted it as a transactional order.
So one day, the family was out for a drive.
And they were involved in a horrific head-on collision. The father's right arm was torn off at the shoulder.
Which is horrifying on its own. But the truly chilling part of the story is what happened to the daughter immediately after.
Following that accident, her arthritis vanished. The skin condition cleared up completely.
That is just so heavy. It forces you to look at the words you use every single day in a completely different light.
The subconscious didn't maliciously hurt the father, it just executed the exact parameters of the belief he drilled into it.
It is chemistry. 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. He provided the formula, and the engine room built it.
Exactly. Okay, so that's autosuggestion, the internal dialogue. But let's look at heterosuggestion, the external input.
This is where the concept of the watchman becomes incredibly relevant to everyday life.
The text uses a brilliant, simple contrast between 2 people on a ship to explain how external suggestions gain power over us.
Okay, picture this. Imagine you're on a cruise, and you walk up to a timid-looking passenger who is already looking a little nervous about the rocking of the boat.
You look them right in the eye and say, "You look incredibly pale. I feel certain you are going to be seasick."
Now, you are just offering words. But what happens in the passenger's mind?
Well, that passenger already has a latent, unvoiced internal anxiety about getting sick. When you offer that heterosuggestion, it perfectly aligns with their internal fear.
Their conscious mind, their watchman, doesn't reject it. It agrees with it.
It says, "Yes, I probably am getting sick." The gate swings wide open, the suggestion drops into the engine room, and the subconscious immediately executes the physiological response.
The passenger gets nauseous, their skin goes clammy, and they run for the rail.
But take those exact same words and apply them to a different watchman.
You walk up to a weathered, tough-as-nails sailor who has been on the water for 20 years. You say, "You look pale, you're going to be seasick."
The sailor's either going to laugh in your face or tell you to get lost. Why? Because your external suggestion directly contradicts his absolute ingrained internal conviction that he is immune to seasickness.
His conscious watchman is impenetrable on this subject. He instantly rejects the premise.
Therefore, the suggestion bounces off, the subconscious never receives the order, and his stomach remains perfectly fine.
That is a massive insight. The suggestion itself, the words spoken by the outside world, has zero independent power.
The words are empty vessels.
The power only activates if the recipient gives mental consent. If you don't agree with the suggestion, it just has no juice.
And this mechanic explains some of the most extreme, almost unbelievable phenomena in human psychology.
Like psychogenic death. The text brings up the story of the fatal crystal gazer in India.
Oh, this story is wild. So you have a completely healthy, robust young man. He goes to a fortune teller, a crystal gazer.
And this woman looks at him and tells him with absolute authority that he has weak heart and that he's going to die at the next new moon.
Now, let's look at the watchman. This man was raised in a culture or had a personal belief system where he assumed this woman possessed genuine occult powers.
He believed she could actually see the future.
Because of that underlying belief, his conscious mind completely surrendered. He accepted her statement as an inescapable factual major premise.
He literally just opened the gate and let the virus walk right in.
He goes home, he writes his will, he gathers his family and tells them he's going to die.
And when the new moon arrives, his heart stops. He dies on schedule.
The text is very careful to point out that he was not killed by magic. He was not killed by a curse or by the crystal gazer's words.
Her words were, as the author beautifully puts it, like 10 arrows aimed at a battleship. They had no physical force.
What killed him was his own subconscious mind. He accepted the suggestion of death, and his subconscious engine room, which controls the autonomic nervous system, executed the command and shut down his cardiovascular system.
When you connect this to the modern world, it suddenly makes so much sense why childhood conditioning is so sticky.
Oh, absolutely. When we are kids, our conscious watchman isn't fully developed yet.
We don't have the analytical skills to say, hey, this adult is just projecting their own insecurities onto me.
Exactly. When a parent, a teacher, or a societal figure tells a child, "You'll never amount to anything," or "People like us don't get rich," or "You can't trust anyone,"
The child's mind just accepts those heterosuggestions as absolute truths. They sink straight into the deep soil.
they become the foundational programming for their adult lives. They will self-sabotage their careers or relationships because their subconscious is just faithfully running the code planted decades ago.
But let me challenge the practical application of this, because it's easy to talk about sailors and fortune tellers.
Sure, go ahead.
The text says we can just reject these negative suggestions.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work in high-stakes modern reality?
What do you mean?
Let's say you go to a specialist. A doctor with a wall full of Ivy League diplomas sits you down, looks at a scan, and gives you a terrifying, highly specific medical diagnosis. They give you 6 months to live.
Okay, a very real scenario.
Right. How on earth does a normal person act as a watchman and reject that suggestion without just falling into sheer delusional denial? I mean, ignoring a doctor isn't being a good watchman. It's just being foolish.
That is the crux of the matter, and it requires a really nuanced understanding of what rejection means in this context.
Okay, break it down for me.
The author makes it clear that true rejection is not just sticking your fingers in your ears, ignoring the symptoms, and yelling, "I'm perfectly fine."
Right, because that wouldn't actually change the internal fear.
Exactly. You cannot just leave a vacuum in your mind because fear will always rush back in to fill it.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. To truly reject a negative suggestion, you must utilize the law of substitution.
The law of substitution. What is that?
You acknowledge the doctor's data, the physical shadow of the condition, but you refuse to accept it as the final authority. You counteract the fear by deliberately, intensely focusing your conscious mind on a stronger, positive conviction.
Which would be what in this case?
The innate, flawless healing intelligence within your own subconscious. You overwrite the prognosis with a stronger blueprint.
And this leads us directly into one of the most provocative claims in the source material, doesn't it? The concept of the subconscious mind as the ultimate universal physical healer.
Yes, this brings us to the miracles, the medicine, and the blind faith.
The source material draws a really hard line here. It states that the subconscious mind built your body from a single fertilized cell.
It knows exactly how every organ, nerve, and tissue functions.
It maintains this complex machinery 24 hours a day, it never sleeps, and it inherently possesses the perfect blueprint for optimal health.
The underlying philosophy here is that all physical disease originates as a mental pattern, a distortion in the blueprint caused by fear, anxiety, or negative belief.
Therefore, all healing, regardless of the method used, ultimately relies on the subconscious mind doing the actual cellular repair work.
The text claims it doesn't matter if you use a surgeon's scalpel, a pharmaceutical drug, a chiropractic adjustment, or a prayer at a holy shrine.
Those are all just different delivery mechanisms to get the subconscious mind to activate its own healing protocols.
Let's go back to Dr. Esdai in India, the story we opened with. When we look at that through this framework, it stops being a mystery and becomes a mechanical process.
Right. Esdai put his patients into a hypnotic trance. And what is hypnosis, really?
It is essentially a technique to artificially put the conscious watchman to sleep.
Once the critical, fearful conscious mind was out of the way, Esdai spoke directly to the engine room.
He suggested that the pain receptors would not fire and that no infection would occur.
And because the subconscious controls the autonomic nervous system, it literally restricted the blood flow, blocked the pain signals to the brain, and marshaled the white blood cells to prevent sepsis.
It did exactly what the captain ordered. It proves that the subconscious has absolute dominion over the physical structure of the body, provided the conscious mind doesn't interfere with doubt and fear.
And it doesn't even require formal hypnosis. Sometimes it just requires pure, unadulterated, blind belief.
Which brings us to the story of the man in Perth, Australia.
Oh, this story is amazing. So there was this man who was dying of severe tuberculosis. His lungs were ravaged.
His son, watching his father waste away, decides to pull off a massive deception to try and save his life.
The son goes out, picks up a random piece of ordinary wood from the sidewalk, takes it to a jeweler, and has it set into a ring.
He then goes back to his dying father and spins this highly elaborate story. He says, "I met a monk recently returned from Europe. I paid him $500 for this ring because it contains a splinter from the true cross."
He frames it as the ultimate holy relic. And what happens to the father?
The father's imagination is completely fired up. His religious conditioning, his hope, his desperation, all of it aligns into a state of absolute blind expectancy.
He snatches the ring, places it over his chest, prays fervently, and goes to sleep.
By the next morning, he is completely healed. Follow-up clinical tests proved negative for tuberculosis.
The man lived to be 89 years old and took the secret to his grave. He never found out the ring was a piece of sidewalk trash.
That story is incredible because it perfectly isolates the variable. The healing agent wasn't a chemical. It wasn't divine radiation from a piece of wood.
The healing agent was his own mind. The wood was just a prop.
And this isn't just anecdotal either. The text references the scientifically validated experiments of Hippolyte Bernheim, a French physician in the late 19th century.
What did he do?
Bernheim demonstrated that he could induce profound physical changes using nothing but suggestion and a prop. He took a patient, applied an ordinary, harmless postage stamp to their neck, and suggested to them that it was a hot fly plaster.
Which is a chemical poultice that causes blistering, right?
Exactly. And the patient's body reacted as if it were a real chemical burn.
Just from a postage stamp.
The patient's subconscious accepted the suggestion, sent blood to the area, and produced a literal fluid-filled physical blister right under the stamp.
That is just wild.
Bernheim went even further. He showed he could induce bloody stigmata. He would trace a patient's name on their arm with a dull instrument that didn't break the skin.
Okay.
He would then suggest that at 4 o'clock that afternoon, the arm would bleed along those exact lines, and at 4 o'clock, the capillaries would open and the name would appear in blood.
So, synthesizing all of this, the text points back to the theory of Paracelsus, the famous Swiss alchemist from the 1500s.
Right. He figured out the underlying mechanism centuries before modern psychology. He essentially said that it does not matter if the object of your faith is real or false.
The biological and psychological effect is exactly the same.
The subconscious mind does not heal you because the relic is genuinely holy, or because the water from the shrine has magical properties.
Or even in the case of modern placebos, because the sugar pill has active pharmacological ingredients.
It heals you because the physical object acts as a psychological lever. It is a prop designed to quiet the conscious mind's skepticism and spark absolute expectation.
The prop creates the mental consent required for the subconscious to do its job.
Exactly.
But wait, that raises a massive logical question for me.
Oh, let's hear it.
If the subconscious built the body, if it possesses this infinite intelligence, and if its default state is to work for the common good of preserving your life, which the text insists it is, why does it allow sickness to take root in the first place?
That's a very fair question.
Right. Like, if it knows how to heal tuberculosis overnight, why let the lungs decay at all? Why do we have to trick our own operating system with wooden rings and postage stamps to get it to heal us? Why isn't it just keeping us perfectly healthy by default?
That is the ultimate paradox of the human condition, and the author is very clear on how this happens. Sickness is not the default.
It's not.
No, the default state of the subconscious is lifeward. It is a principle of harmony and health. Sickness occurs exclusively because of conscious interference.
Ah, back to the gardener.
Exactly. Remember, the subconscious is the soil, and the conscious mind is planting the seeds.
So we are actively planting the sickness.
Usually unconsciously, but yes, if your conscious watchman is constantly letting in fears, anxieties, negative beliefs, and toxic societal conditioning.
Like if you are constantly stressing about your health, anticipating the flu season, or internalizing stress from your job.
Exactly. Those negative, discordant patterns are passed down to the engine room as literal instructions.
Wow. We are sending down bad blueprints. The builder is perfect, but we keep handing it a schematic for a collapsing building.
That's a great way to put it. The subconscious, being totally objective and non-reasoning, simply builds the body according to the fearful, anxious blueprint you provide. It physically manifests the stress.
To stop its interference and trigger a spontaneous healing, you have to bypass the fearful conscious mind.
You have to get the watchman to step aside so the subconscious can revert to its original perfect blueprint.
And that requires understanding the specific mental state in which the subconscious is most receptive, which brings us to the actual mechanics of how to reprogram it.
Which is the perfect bridge into the next major concept, bypassing the watchman.
Right. If we know the conscious mind is the bottleneck, how do we get around it?
Well, this section reveals a huge psychological roadblock that trips almost everyone up when they first try to use the power of their mind. It's called the law of reversed effort.
This is arguably the most counterintuitive concept in the entire text, but it is mechanically essential.
The law of reversed effort states plainly that the subconscious mind does not respond to mental coercion. It does not respond to sheer willpower.
In fact, using willpower to try and force a belief into your subconscious usually guarantees the exact opposite result.
Let's frame this against modern society, because we live in the ultimate hustle culture.
Oh, absolutely. From the time we are kids, we are relentlessly taught that if you want something, you have to force it. You have to grind it out, sweat for it, use sheer grit and willpower to conquer your obstacles.
But this text is arguing that when it comes to the mind, trying too hard is the precise reason people fail.
Because of what willpower implies. When you use willpower, you are implicitly acknowledging that there is a massive opponent.
Right, you are focusing all your mental energy on the obstacle you are trying to overcome.
But remember, your subconscious mind does not argue. and it grows whatever seed you plant.
By focusing so intensely on the struggle, the obstacle, and the effort required to beat it, you are actually impressing the reality of the obstacle into your subconscious.
You are feeding it the concept of struggle, and so it manifests more struggle.
It's like quicksand. The harder your conscious mind struggles and thrashes around trying to escape, the faster you sink into the problem.
If you have ever had insomnia, you know exactly how this works.
Oh, that's the perfect example.
The harder you try to force yourself to fall asleep, the more wide awake and anxious you become. Willpower keeps the watchman on high alert.
To understand how to get past this friction, the text dives into the actual biological link between thoughts and physical reality. We actually have two nervous systems.
The cerebrospinal system is our conscious, voluntary nervous system. It is housed in the brain and spinal cord.
It's how we see, touch, and make voluntary movements. It's the captain's equipment.
Then we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the subconscious involuntary system.
It controls our organs, our digestion, our heartbeat. Its center is a massive ganglia located behind the stomach called the solar plexus.
The text refers to the solar plexus as the abdominal brain.
Right. And for an immaterial thought to become a physical reality, a healing, a habit, a changed circumstance, it must pass from the conscious brain through the cerebrospinal system and be handed over to the sympathetic system, the solar plexus, where it is made into flesh.
This handoff is the critical moment.
And the point is, you cannot force a thought across that bridge with a hammer.
The text uses a great kind of folksy analogy of a furnace repairman to explain how simple and effortless this handoff should be.
Yeah, tell that one.
So a guy's boiler breaks down in the middle of winter. He calls a master repairman. The repairman walks into the basement, looks at the complex machinery for a minute, taps it a few times with a wrench, replaces a single missing bolt, and the boiler instantly roars to life.
He then hands the owner an itemized bill for $200.
And the owner is furious. He says, "You were here for 5 minutes. How can you charge me $200 for replacing one bolt?"
So the repairman writes on the invoice 5 cents for the missing bolt, $199.95 for knowing exactly what was wrong.
It is a perfect metaphor for the mind. The conscious mind is the homeowner. It doesn't need to know how to fix the complex internal workings of the boiler.
It doesn't need to understand the thermodynamics. It just needs to point out the desired outcome. I want heat.
The subconscious mind is the master mechanic. It has the infinite intelligence and the technical know-how to accomplish the goal.
If the conscious mind panics, gets in the way, and tries to tell the mechanic how to do his job, which is what happens when you use anxiety, stress, and willpower, it just breaks the machine further.
So practically speaking, how do we hand the instructions to the mechanic without interfering? How do we slip the blueprint into the engine room without waking up the watchman?
The expert advice from the text is that the subconscious is most accessible when conscious effort is reduced to an absolute minimum.
Specifically, this optimal window occurs in a drowsy, sleepy state, often called a state of reverie or hypnagogia.
The author notes that the highest degree of outcropping of the subconscious occurs just prior to sleep at night and just after we awaken in the morning.
Because in that drowsy state, the conscious mind is submerged. The watchman is essentially asleep at his post.
The critical, analytical, rational doubts that normally neutralize your desires, like, you can't do this, it's impossible, you don't have the money, are quieted down.
The gate to the engine room is left wide open.
Exactly. Because willpower is a liability, the author doesn't just say, stop trying. He provides a highly specific, practical toolkit of alternative techniques.
These methods are designed precisely to bypass conscious effort, utilize that drowsy state, and plant ideas directly into the receptive soil of the subconscious.
Which takes us into the final and arguably most actionable part of our deep dive, the toolkit. Practical methods for reprogramming.
The goal of all these methods, as the text explicitly states, is to achieve an unqualified and undisputed state of agreement in the mind.
No internal conflict, no fighting yourself, just pure, relaxed acceptance.
Let's look at the first tool in the box, the mental movie method.
This relies heavily on the fact that the subconscious thinks in imagery. The Chinese proverb says a picture is worth 1,000 words.
William James, who is considered the father of American psychology, stressed that the subconscious will inevitably bring to pass any picture that is firmly held in the mind and backed by faith.
The author actually shares a personal story of how he used this technique to sell property.
Right, he had a home he wanted to sell, but the market was really tough.
But instead of stressing about finding buyers, negotiating, or worrying about the economy, which would be using willpower and anxiety, He relaxed into that drowsy, hypnagogic state we just talked about.
He visualized the end result as if it were currently happening in the present moment. He didn't picture the process of selling it, he pictured the completion.
He imagined himself holding the final check for the exact amount he wanted. He rejoiced in it. He literally felt the texture of the paper in his mind.
He felt the relief, the satisfaction, and he allowed himself to fall asleep enveloped in that specific feeling. He acted in his own mind as though it were an objective reality.
And because the subconscious cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined, emotionally charged event and a real physical event, it accepted the mental movie as a set of literal instructions.
It took the blueprint and orchestrated the external circumstances to bring the right buyer and seller together. The inner imagery became the mold for the outer reality.
The next tool addresses a common problem. What if your mind wanders too much to hold a mental movie? This is where the Baudouin technique comes in.
It's named after Charles Baudouin, a professor at the Rousseau Institute in France.
Right.
Right.
He understood that if you use a long, complex prayer or a highly detailed affirmation, your conscious mind starts analyzing the grammar, questioning the logic, and boom, the watchman wakes up.
So Baudouin's formula was to condense the idea of what you want into a very short, simple, easily memorized phrase, and you repeat it over and over like a lullaby while in that sleepy state.
The text gives a beautiful, poignant example of this. There was a widow who was trapped in a bitter, highly protracted legal battle with her stepchildren over her late husband's will.
It was draining her emotionally, financially, and physically.
She was taught the Baudouin technique. She took this massive, complex, terrifying legal problem and condensed the desired outcome into just 6 words.
It is finished in divine order.
It is finished in divine order. That's it.
For her, those specific words meant that the infinite intelligence of her subconscious would somehow bring about a harmonious adjustment. She didn't try to figure out the legal loopholes.
Every night for 10 nights, she got into a sleepy state and repeated that phrase slowly, quietly, and with deep feeling.
She allowed a sense of inner peace to pervade her mind, preventing the watchman from worrying about court dates, and then drifted into a normal sleep.
And the result? On the morning of the 11th day, she woke up with a profound sense of well-being. And later that afternoon, her attorney called.
The opposing counsel and the stepchildren had abruptly, inexplicably decided to settle. A completely harmonious agreement was reached, and the litigation was dropped entirely.
That is the power of minimizing effort. You don't try to figure out the how, the mechanics of the boiler. You just calmly impress the what.
Then there is the thank you technique. This one is particularly fascinating to me because it's essentially a biohack for your emotional state.
It's all about bypassing fear by living in a state of preemptive gratitude.
The example used is a man named Mr. Broke. And yes, that was his actual name, which is perfectly ironic.
He was out of work, he had 3 children, and he had a mountain of bills piling up. He was terrified.
But instead of focusing on the poverty, which would just plant more seeds of lack, he used this technique. Every night and every morning, for 3 weeks, he quieted his mind and repeated the words, "Thank you, Father, for my wealth."
But the key here is the execution. He didn't just rattle the words off like a parrot. He repeated them until the mood, the actual physiological feeling of thankfulness, dominated his mind.
He imagined he was addressing the infinite intelligence within him. When thoughts of fear or lack would inevitably pop up during the day, like when he'd look at a past due electric bill, he wouldn't fight the fear.
Right. He would immediately counter it by repeating, "Thank you, Father." He was constantly lifting his mind back to the point of acceptance.
And the sequel to the story is that he runs into a former employer on the street whom he hasn't seen in 20 years. The man offers him a very lucrative position, advances him $500 to clear his immediate debts.
And eventually, Mr. Broke becomes a vice president of that company. The gratitude technique works because, from a psychological standpoint, gratitude shifts your focus completely from the problem to the fulfillment of the solution.
It moves your brain out of the fear-driven amygdala and into the executive function, opening you up to opportunities you would otherwise miss.
But I want to pause here and really dig into this because not everyone's mind works that way.
Yeah, some people are highly analytical. They are inherently skeptical.
They cannot just lull themselves to sleep with a phrase or force a feeling of gratitude when their bank account is overdrawn. They need logic.
They need to understand why they should believe something before they let it into the engine room.
And the author recognizes that. For the highly analytical mind, the text offers the argumentative method, which was developed by Dr. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby.
He was a pioneer in mental healing in the mid-1800s, right?
Exactly. His method is entirely different. You don't bypass reason, you use it. You act as a defense attorney in the courtroom of your own mind.
You use spiritual and logical reasoning to completely overwhelm the negative belief.
The text details the healing of a crippled, bedridden woman using this method. Dr. Quimby examined her, and he diagnosed her case not as a physical hardware issue, but as a mental software bug.
She was imprisoned by a deeply restrictive, terrifying, literal interpretation of her religious creed. She believed God was punishing her.
She lived in a mental tomb of fear, and that intense mental stagnation literally manifested physically as paralysis.
So Dr. Quimby didn't ask her to just believe she was healed. He argued her case.
He explained to her that her sickness was purely a physical shadow of a false mental belief. He presented overwhelming logical evidence to her mind.
He explained the architecture we've been discussing, that the subconscious intelligence created her body, so it inherently knew how to heal it, but her fear was blocking it.
He logically deconstructed her terrifying religious dogmas. He rendered a verdict in her favor in the courtroom of his mind and transferred that conviction to hers, liberating her through understanding.
And because her conscious mind, her analytical watchman, was finally satisfied by the logic, it dropped its defenses.
The subconscious received the new blueprint, and the result was that she stood up and walked without her crutches.
It proves that the watchman isn't the enemy. It just needs to be convinced. You can bypass it with sleep, or you can recruit it with logic.
Looking at this entire toolkit, the mental movies, the short Baudouin phrases, the argumentative logic, the preemptive gratitude, what I keep coming back to is the cognitive dissonance of it all.
Yeah, that's a big hurdle for a lot of people.
If your reality is that you are flat broke or severely ill and you are constantly saying thank you for my wealth or visualizing yourself running a marathon, doesn't your conscious mind eventually snap back and say, you are lying to yourself?
Doesn't that create a massive, stressful internal conflict?
That friction is exactly what most people experience when they try this, and it's why they quit. The cognitive dissonance is very real.
But the expert response, based on synthesizing the entire philosophy of the text, is that the cognitive dissonance only exists as long as you believe the outer world is the primary reality.
The author insists on persistence because you are trying to force a profound philosophical shift.
A shift in what we actually consider real.
Yes. The text posits that the inner world of thought and feeling is the actual primary reality. The outer world of bills, sickness, and circumstance is simply a delayed reflection, a shadow cast by a past inner state.
When you practice the thank you technique, you aren't lying about your current bank account. You are changing the reality at the source level.
You are swapping out the blueprint in the engine room. The cognitive dissonance fades the exact moment the subconscious fully accepts the new blueprint.
Because at that point, your inner conviction becomes stronger than the outer appearances. You know the ship is turning. The outer world simply hasn't caught up to the new coordinates yet.
The inner world is the reality, and the outer world is just the delayed shadow.
That is a heavy, completely paradigm-shifting concept. And it beautifully brings us to the end of our deep dive today.
It really ties everything together.
Let's summarize the profound mechanical implications of what we have explored from Joseph Murphy's work. You are the gardener. Your subconscious is the incredibly rich, fertile, entirely uncritical soil.
It is an engine of pure creation, completely devoid of morality, judgment, or a sense of humor.
Whether you consciously plant seeds of health, wealth, and harmony through deliberate techniques like the Baudouin phrase or vivid mental movies,
or whether you accidentally plant weeds through negative heterosuggestion, fear, and complaining,
that soil is going to grow without question. It is up to the watchman at the gate, your conscious mind, to protect the engine room from faulty orders.
And as we learned with the law of reversed effort, the best way to give new orders isn't through grinding, stressful willpower, but through relaxed, confident assumption.
The power is absolute, but it requires finesse, not force, to direct it.
We started this deep dive by talking about how the exact things we deeply fear often end up happening, and how brilliant flashes of intuition seem to come from nowhere.
Now we know the architecture behind those phenomena. It is the exact same machinery, just operating with different blueprints.
So we want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to ponder as you go about the rest of your day.
Based on the mechanics we've discussed, if your subconscious mind is a tireless 24/7 recording device that takes every single thing your conscious mind accepts as a literal, actionable command.
What subtle, invisible instructions are you giving it right now, just by listening to your own internal monologue?
When you complain about the traffic, when you worry about that upcoming meeting, when you casually mutter that you are exhausted or can't ever catch a break,
Are you programming a masterpiece, or are you accidentally writing a tragedy?
the watchman is at the gate. It is time to check what you are letting in.